On my journey to become the best version of myself during quarantine, I interviewed guests who gave their life experiences and expertise on love to finances and everything in between. Join me to learn a thing or two on becoming the best version of you with Gigi Show. We have brought back, by popular demand, we have brought back Dr. Copeland. So yay! She has graced us and blessed us with her presence tonight. She has a busy schedule providing therapy services to her own clients. So we are very appreciative that she took the time out to meet with us tonight. So this is part 2 of 3 series, okay? She came on a few weeks ago. And it was so awesome. Even my mom, she couldn't speak enough about Dr. Copeland because her and my sister truly enjoyed our conversation. We talked about many different things like post-traumatic stress disorder. We talked about depression. We talked about a number of things. And it was well received by our community. And so I asked her to come back this evening to see if she would talk to us about bipolar and about emotional and physical abuse. So those are the subject matters that we will be speaking on tonight, and we will be offering resources also to those in need. So without further ado, last time I introduced Dr. Copeland, but this time I'll switch it up a bit, and I am going to have her introduce herself so we can get a little bit familiar about who she is. So welcome to the show again, Dr. Copeland. Once again, we appreciate your presence tonight.
Perfect. Thank you for having me back again. As you stated, I am Dr. Copeland. I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Michigan. I have worked in the profession for 19, almost 20 years now. And my training took place at Western Michigan University. Go Broncos! For my undergrad as well as graduate studies in community agency counseling. And then I completed my doctoral studies at Walden University. And that in itself was a huge task and an awesome feat. So yay for that. And now Dr. Copeland. And I am now wearing the hat of not only a clinical professional, but also a counselor educator, because I am teaching master's level students in the online environment in master's counseling programs. That's me professionally. When it comes to my life personally, I'm married. I have 2 pretty amazing sons who just turned 12 and 10. So they will be 7th and 5th graders. And we're just trying to navigate this thing called life. So,
did you tell me that are their birthdays on the same day?
They're not the same. They're a week apart. So one was on the 14th and the other was the 21st, which is why we could not meet those Tuesday nights because they each had birthdays. And the norm is to celebrate their birthdays after each of them have had one. And we had a big giant birthday celebration with a couple of friends that Wednesday with social distancing in place to make sure that we were safe and they were safe, but they just needed an outlet with some buddies. And so we did that last week. So yes, they're a week apart, but they're 2 years apart in age.
Okay. Well, it's a busy time of a year in your house during birthday time, I'm sure.
Very much so.
Because they're looking at each other like, okay, what he get for his birthday? What am I getting for my birthday?
That's pretty much it. And some gifts we gave together on one person's birthday, and in the other one we did the same thing, so no one felt completely left out. But yeah, it was crazy. And it's the youngest one who was born early and the oldest whose birthday is second, so it's kind of like I feel bad, so we got to make it work. But yeah, it's fun.
That's so sweet. That's so sweet.
Thanks.
Well, again, guys, we're going to jump right in. And if you have any comments or questions for Dr. Copeland throughout, the conversation, please feel free to chat. And I will try my best to address those comments or questions to Dr. Copeland.
Also, like I said, we're not going to leave you guys empty-handed. So there is quite a bit of resources that Dr. Copeland sent me over. And y'all know I ain't the best technology savvy. So in between this, I will either jot them in our chat. And if I'm not able to do that, I will definitely post them right after so that you can get those resources and get the help that you need if you need some, okay? Okay, so we're going to jump right in and we're going to start off with bipolar.
Absolutely.
Okay. A lot of people have heard the word, may have family members that even may have it without being formally diagnosed. A person who's watching may have symptoms and haven't been formally diagnosed.
Right.
And you may even be in a relationship with somebody who is also bipolar and haven't been or have been clinically diagnosed. So we're going to have the conversation that our community so desperately needs to have and just educate ourselves and shed some light on what bipolar looks like and what it's defined as, what are the side effects, and how can you get help for it? Okay. So I looked up the definition of bipolar in psychology today, and it states, Dr. Copeland, that bipolar disorders or manic depressive illness is a group of disorders organized by the presence of pronounced high energy phases known as manic episodes. It's typically unusual shifts in mood and energy manifest in increased activity levels and impair ability to function. The impairment created by bipolar disorder can be severe and can result in damaged relationships, poor job performance, or school performance, or even lead to suicide. So there are several types of bipolar disorder, which I wasn't aware of. So this is an education for me as well. And we'll have Dr. Copeland go into that. So this disorder can also turn into depression, full-blown manic episodes that can last for a week or more. And so Dr. Copeland, tell us more about bipolar. What exactly do you know about it?
So bipolar is a mental health diagnosis. It's really something where what we use is the DSM-5. It's a manual that's used for clinicians in the mental health profession for diagnosing an array of disorders. Bipolar is just one of those types of depressive episodes or disorders that people can have. Now, what's clear to help people understand is that perfect example of a person who's experiencing bipolar right now in popular culture would be Kanye West. Kanye West is formally diagnosed as bipolar. He has expressed this. He shared this in several different interviews. And in his most recent episodes, he is in what I believe a manic state. So you can clearly understand that, again, according to bipolar, there is the depressive state, and then there is the manic state. The difference is, and this is how they're different, so you can clearly understand. In the depressive state, there is an irritable mood. There is a low affect. Usually there's a loss of interest in things that usually bring you pleasure and enjoyment. There's sometimes a need to sleep, or you may not be able to sleep. There's an element of social withdrawal. You feel hopeless, you feel worthless. There are elements of suicidal ideation, which is suicidal thoughts. There's also suicidal gestures, which is someone actually gestures hurting themselves. They've made attempts. They may not have been successful, but they gestured it. There's also sometimes hallucinations or delusions. And usually there's a history of it. It's chronic. So it's just a matter of when it happens or when it doesn't happen. The opposite of that would be the manic state. And so that's where you have these elevated, irritable moods. They're expansive. You're just really, really hyper, really, really excitable. And so these, like you said, from the written thing from Psychology Today, can lead to work impairment, social impairment, as well as relationship damage. Because if you take, for example, again, popular culture of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, after he did his bid for a campaign celebration or a campaign event he had for running for president, she in turn did something on social media and spoke about him having, or people needing to pray for him and not to mock him because it's a disorder. So that's a clear indicator or a picture of what it can look like on a larger, grander scale. But for people regular, everyday, who are not celebrities, it can still manifest. It just plays out differently. So then you have people in the manic state that they have a rushed, elevated speech, their inability to keep a thought process straight. Sometimes they have little or no appetite. Sometimes they can go extended periods without sleep because they're in such a heightened, elevated state. They lose attention easily and they're distracted. And one of the things that stands out is that they become very bizarre in their dress, their grooming patterns. It's a number of different factors that play out. They also, with regards to if they have projects in mind that they really want to succeed at in doing, if someone tries to stop them in that, they become very irritable and angry because they aren't able to get to that goal. But sometimes because of the manic state, they usually don't get to finish it on their own anyway. So that's kind of the progression of the two. But at the same time, it's really important to understand that usually what happens is you need to have a formal diagnosis. Your symptoms are usually presented at a certain period of time and they last for a certain period of time. That's kind of how we as clinicians are able to diagnose what we think is happening for you. Based upon that diagnosis, is usually recommended for people suffering from bipolar that they are medicated with some form of psychotropic medication. And that's usually someone that is a psychiatrist that monitors your medication. And the challenge with any form of medication, whether it's mental illness or dealing with some pain in your body, you have to find the right combination of medication for it to be effective. And so Kanye West, again, because he's talked about it, if anyone's ever saw or heard him, he was on, I think it was a show called My Next Guest Needs No Introduction. It's a David Letterman series on Netflix. And he was one of the guests that he spoke to. And in that, he talked about his impairment and he talked about being diagnosed. He talked about being on medication and he expressed stopping medication because it impaired him with regards to his level of creativity. And sometimes artistic types are the ones who may experience these manic or depressive episodes. And so he does not take medication. And now you see the ramifications of not taking something consistently and regularly in your body to see if it affects you chemically to balance you out. If you wait patiently and work through the process, then you can probably get on the right combination of medication, but it takes time. Not everything is going to work instantly. And so if you don't...
Let me ask you, Dr. Copeland.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see very visibly how important medication or treatment is when you have this disorder. So when you mentioned chemically, so are you saying that this isn't something that a person has to do to become bipolar? This is I don't want to use the word genetic, but it's a chemical. Would you call it a chemical imbalance?
The chemical imbalance where your wiring in your brain is just a little bit different. And so sometimes you need a little extra support to balance or recalibrate what's happening for you mentally. And so the intent is, I'm a firm believer that if you're going to take medication, you should also be in treatment, meaning talk therapy, so that you're talking through what you're experiencing. You're able to identify what your triggers are. You're able to identify what symptoms you experience, because everyone doesn't experience the exact same symptoms, and some don't experience at the same level of severity of others. But if you're aware of what's happening for you, then you can be more proactive than reactive when it comes to taking care of yourself. And part of that is the journey of talking about what's happening when you noticed these symptoms started to present, at what different points in your life you saw them happening. Because sometimes people are much older and they don't even realize that, oh, I'm just in a bad place, or I'm having a hard time. But it's genuinely, you're experiencing a depressive episode, but you don't know that. And so if you have to step back and look back and someone asks you certain questions to clarify what that looks like, we can see a bigger picture of how long this may have been happening for you and how you coped in the past. Sometimes people are drinking. Sometimes people do drugs to manage their symptoms, which only suppresses or exacerbates what's happening. And so that is one of those elements where if you're in treatment, not just with taking medication and being monitored with that, but also in talk therapy until you're at a place that you're stabilized, then that's where it's more of a, you need extra support, you need extra help, especially if there's elements of suicidal ideation or suicidal gestures, and even when you're contemplating the use of substances for coping. You really need to get extra support and be able to process and talk through what's happening, knowing that it's going to be hard and it's going to be uncomfortable. But the first step in getting help is to admit that there's a challenge, and then to get diagnosed with what's happening, and then we can create a treatment plan. Because that's all that counseling is, or any form of mental health treatment is us creating a plan of action for us to identify what's helping and what's not helping, and then putting into place the strategies to be successful or as healthy as you can be at the level that you can get, resources and information and support. So that's a key part too.
So this is something, when we say a chemical imbalance, that means that they're basically born with this chemical imbalance?
Mm-hmm. It's not something that just kind of randomly pops up. It's something that could possibly have been there, but it usually at certain points in time, there could be an actual trigger to something happening where it's now significant enough to note it. Sometimes we don't notice it.
I noticed that the symptoms can appear first in like the teenage years, or even later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
anywhere?
true?
Yes, anywhere in that range. It's just, and that's the hard piece, is because developmentally, when you're a teenager, you're hormonal. So it's hard to identify how much of your hormone levels are impacting your mood, how much of your, environment is impacting your mood. And so it's only after we identify that there are actual episodes happening, like these moments have happened more than once and lasted over a period of time at different points in your life, that we're now able to identify that it's recurrent, and that now we can actually diagnose you. Sometimes it's hard to identify with just one moment in time. But if we take a snapshot and look at multiple snapshots in the spectrum of your life and note, oh gosh, this is what's happening, this is what we're seeing, especially if you're older, over the age of 21 or later in life, then we're able to kind of look back and reflect and say, tell me, how long did you feel this? Did you ever feel this way before? What was happening in your life when it happened before? So the onset can happen in your teen years, but the challenge is it's hard to identify sometimes because, again, you have the developmental component where your brain is still developing, your hormones are all over the place, so you're just adjusting to whatever is the norm, but it can be masked because people assume, oh, that's just being a teenager, they're grumpy all the time, versus, no, this is serious, they can't function, they don't want to get out of bed, not like I'm tired, but they really don't have the energy to get out of the bed. So it's those types of things where you go a step further and say, let's take you to the doctor and get a checkup and all these different things. And so that kind of identifies for you how much more is probably happening and what tools and resources are available for you to get the support you need.
Wow, that was very good information, very valuable. I have 2 questions from our watching and listening audience. One from Adjua Musea. She says, do symptoms increase with age?
I've never necessarily seen it increase with age. What can happen is the severity of the symptoms can just increase. So, for example, again, thinking about the lifespan development of when, or as a woman, say as a woman, when you hit a certain peak age in your life, your hormone levels begin to shift and change. So you have to identify how much of that is hormonal, and that's just your body, and how much of that is the chemical imbalance in your physical wiring of your brain that's impacting you. So if you are already a woman that's experiencing depressive episodes and it's impacting your arousal levels, then how much of that was happening before a certain age? You know, for most women, their peak of sexual activity or heightened is in their 40s. And so if you're heightening or if you're becoming premenopausal or perimenopausal, all these factors are starting to play out, which is why it's important, one, to get a yearly physical, two, to know your body. Track your body enough to know something's not right, something's off. And when you're able to note how long that's been happening, and you go to the doctor and say, look, this is what's happening. I'm crying all day. I can't get out of the bed. I'm having these challenges. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be around people. I'm starting to hear stuff or feel stuff or see things. I can't focus. There's going to be this checklist of things we're going to look for, but the key is how much is it based upon what's happening for you at your age of development and hormonally, and how much of it is in your head and what's happening and is impacting everything else. So I wouldn't say that it worsens, but it's just a matter of identifying which one it is. And then if it is hormonal and it's now your chemical imbalance, you have double going on, and you have to be able to treat both aspects. So if your levels of testosterone are dropping or your levels of estrogen are dropping, and that's impacting your level of energy and is impacting how you're able to function, then that is more about your physical body genetically made up. I'm adjusting to different things. What do I do to supplement that? Whether it's vitamins, whether it's herbal remedies, whether it's holistic care, or is it I need medication to be stabilized and then I can get to the other stuff. So that's the part that has to be deciphered, which is why it's important to get a yearly physical, track your own body enough to know what's happening, because you're your only and best advocate when it comes to making people aware of what's happening. And if you feel as though your doctor isn't hearing or they're not listening, go to another physician, or better yet, schedule an appointment to see a counselor or some type of mental health professional, and they can process things and diagnose you accordingly. Don't just do Google searches. Don't just do that.
Please don't. Please don't. I am guilty of that. You know, having a symptom, it will take you in the wrong direction and drive you absolutely mad.
Don't live on Google. Don't live on WebMD. You'll be dead according to these categories. So that's why it's important to at least get basic information and understanding, and then go a step further. And if you're employed and your job has an EAP, that's usually free counseling through your job that your job never knows about. And those persons are usually paneled through insurance companies. And if your insurance is taken by them, you get so many free visits through this EAP to at least get a diagnosis and see what's happening. Then your insurance kicks in, and now you can start using your insurance at a certain point so that you can actually be treated.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have
another question.
One more question from my mom, actually, and then I have 2 more things I'd like you to share about bipolar, and then we'll jump into the emotional and physical abuse. Mm-hmm. So my mom wanted to know, if a person does not take the medication, as you duly noted about Kanye, like what does that mean? What does their life look like? An average person, what does their life look like if they refuse, especially like if you're in a relationship, or if you have a child, that may have been diagnosed, or like I said, an adult who's a spouse, and they just kind of like Kanye, they just refuse to take the medicine after they're diagnosed, or
start to feel better. Some start to feel better and they stop the medication too. That's another challenge. So, sorry not to cut you off, but the thought that comes to mind is that everyday people who are experiencing these challenges, if you don't take your medication, we don't know what level of improvement can happen. It's just like any other medical condition, except the difference is it's your brain. If someone was to say you need to take this pill every day to live, would you take the pill every day to live? The same goes to, are you willing to take the time that it is needed or allotted for you to take the medication that's prescribed to you for finding the right balance or combination of meds so that you can actually see an improvement? Because you want to see a quality of life that's better. Medication can help with that. If you don't take the medication, there's a strong likelihood your symptoms will continue. And depending on the severity of them, you may not function the way you need to. So again, your work is impaired. So maybe you don't go to work anymore. Or you go to work, but you isolate yourself. Or you go to work and you are disheveled. Now you have your supervisor questioning. Or you could lose your job if you're having to work with people. Then your social engagements. You may isolate yourself to a point that people constantly are trying to check on you, but you've isolated yourself to a point that they no longer check on you. So now you're literally all alone, whether it's in your own house with your loved one or your family members. They now are like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm tired of checking on you. And so they check out in their own way and let you figure it out. And then you have the impairment of relationships. So if you're
push them away,
you push them away. So if you have a child, and this is the hard piece, if you are an adult who's having these challenges and you have children that you're trying to raise, the hard piece is 9 times out of 10, if you're not functioning at a level where you can take care of your family, your kids are on their own. And so they're kind of raising themselves, or they're now taking care of you. So the roles have reversed where they're the adult and they've now taken on this adult role, unfortunately, to take care of you. So if nothing else, which I've always told clients, because those of us, even though you have a doctor in your name, it does not make you a person to write prescriptions. You have to have a medical degree. That is a psychiatrist or any other medical physician that went to medical school. That is not a psychologist. That is not a social worker. That is not a counselor. That is not a clinical mental health counselor. Any of those things that, even though there may be a doctor at the front, if there is no MD on the end, we do not write prescriptions. That's number one. And if there's someone that's going to monitor your medication, it's usually going to be a psychiatrist that you see every so often. You won't see them weekly. They're the person that's just managing and prescribing the medication and checking in to see how they're doing. You are now allotted to see someone weekly or bi-weekly in an actual face-to-face setting, which would be counseling. So unfortunately, if you don't take the meds, again, Kanye is an example of where it can end up, how it can look. And then for those who are experiencing the depressive episodes, it can get to a place where they may not want to live anymore. And so they kill themselves. And we see plenty of celebrities, unfortunately, who have committed suicide. But you never know that they're unhappy. But this is the best way that they saw that their pain and suffering could end. And so that's a whole nother bag of things, because now you have loved ones left here feeling guilty and not knowing what to do and how to process the fact.
And blaming themselves maybe too.
Yeah, because you took your life and they didn't know, or they didn't have an awareness or a sense that you were that bad of a position. So unfortunately, if you don't take your medication, it can have long-term effects to the point where there are some people who are homeless, but it's because of mental illness. It's not because they wanted to be there. It's because their mental illness is that significant and they've never been treated. They've never been medicated. They've never been able to function. And so they lost their job. They lost their home. They lost their family. They now have no money. So now they are living literally on the streets or in shelters. So not to say everyone that's homeless is, but those who you see talking to themselves or having grave difficulties or challenges, they have mental issues.
Can it lead to being admitted to a hospital, a mental hospital?
Mm-hmm. Yes. If someone sees you, or if it's notable enough, sometimes those who are incarcerated actually have mental illness. And that's where it's important to have someone who's a trained physician to know, like, this isn't the norm for what just happened. They actually are experiencing a mental illness and they need treatment for that and not incarceration. They broke the law to feed themselves because they're hungry. Why are they hungry? Because they lost their job. They lost their job because of mental illness. And it's just this big ball of wax that is hard to untangle. So, yes, unfortunately, it can lead to incarceration, but it can also, if someone sees you, it can lead to either voluntary or involuntary treatment, depending on if you have support or a support system that says this is what's happening and they need to be hospitalized. So it can happen.
Can you look at the camera right now and speak to the individual who has been diagnosed and they may feel some kind of shame or may feel some kind of just some strange feelings about being diagnosed, like there's something wrong with them, or that they're different. Can you give a good word to them?
Yeah, I think if nothing else, is that you can't blame yourself and say it's your fault. It's just how you were wired. You're just different. That's all it is. And the sooner,
which is not a bad thing if you're wired different.
It's not a bad thing. It just means that you're unique. That's all it is. And you need a little extra to make sure that you're able to function, to make sure that you have the support that you need. And most importantly, there are people who want to help you. There are people who are here to support you. There are people like myself who are in the profession to help others. We're available. We are always willing to be there and to assess and to diagnose and to support you. So if nothing else, if the shame and the embarrassment of believing something is wrong with you is what's keeping you from getting help, that is the first thing you need to stop telling yourself. There is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing to kind of discredit you or think that you're not worthy of being treated or being cared for or receiving support. We are here, just like your loved ones are there for you, just like strangers that you may cross paths with in facilities who work in this profession. We are here for you to help you. And just like any other medical condition, if you had that happening in your body, whether it's pain in your body, if it was cancerous or whatever it may be, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have something extra happening that you need extra support with. And the only difference is we don't see it. It's one thing if I have an amputated limb, I can see that. But the inside, the challenge that comes from the emotional toil, the mental toil that comes with keeping such a burden to yourself and being afraid of people and what they'll think of you, combined with the shame that you may feel about yourself, is to know that it's okay. It is normal and it is common. And if you're a person of color or if you're a Black person, this is something that we've not discussed enough to tell you that this is normal. This is actually more frequent than you would be surprised to expect, that we do have mental illness that is in the Black community. We do have mental health issues that are in the Black community. The only difference is now is that you need to give yourself permission to talk about it, and you need to give yourself permission to ask for help. And then you have to give yourself permission to receive that help. Those are the most important parts.
And love yourself, guys. This is my little nugget. Y'all know how I feel about nuggets. And Dr. Copeland, she's dropping so many nuggets on us, but I want to drop a couple myself. Is that, if you do have bipolar, like she said, it is okay. Like literally, there is something wrong with all of us. I have grown to learn this. Okay,
we are not perfect.
We're not. We are. And I'm familiar with the DSM-5, because of my studies. And so, if you look in that big old thick book, you can find all kind of stuff wrong with each one of us.
All
okay,
kinda.
Would you agree?
All kind of. There's something for everybody. For everything.
Yes. So don't feel like, feel so ashamed, because I know people who have felt, ashamed, that they have been diagnosed with something. Like I said, I want you to find comfort knowing that you, one, are not alone. There are millions of people who join you if you do have this disorder. And there are, like she said, plenty of resources willing to help you. And I really don't want you to cheat yourself out of having a good, healthy quality of life just because you're not a pill taker. Okay.
Right.
Drop that right there. I don't care if you're not a pill taker. Your spouse don't care if you're not a pill taker. Your kid, do it for the kid. Okay. If you don't like to take pills, do it for them, because these people love you. Your friends and family and spouses, they love you. They want you to see you here, and they want you to be well and productive while you are here. Okay. And so, like she said, get with your medical physician or your psychiatrist or whatever other medical, counselors are out there. Find out what regimen and what treatment works best for you, because it is a trial and error. Everybody's different. And then once you guys hit it on the nose, drop that pill like it's a vitamin. Like I take plenty of them every day, and keep it moving. You don't have to keep thinking about it day after day after day. What's wrong with you? Listen, we all jacked up, okay? In some degree, in shape or form. We all got something going
We're
on.
all on a spectrum somewhere.
All are on a spectrum. So don't feel like you might feel. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, okay? So I just wanted to share that with everybody, that it is okay. If you heard some things that Dr. Copeland said that sounds familiar, that you are personally experiencing, or your child is personally experiencing, or your spouse, lead them to a counselor, lead them to a doctor to see if they truly do have bipolar disorder, because it could be something else, but get it checked out so that they can be well. Okay. So they can be well, because this show is all about becoming our best version of ourselves. And I'm truly passionate about all of us living our best life. That's why Dr. Copeland is here, because she is in this profession to also help others live their best lives as well. And so last question on the subject matter was, how confidential is EAPs?
EAPs are very confidential. They are a third party. So if through your company, you know that there's an EAP, there's a employee assistance program, there is usually an 800 number to contact, or some form of contact number for the EAP. Once you contact the EAP, that has nothing to do with your place of employment. They cannot report that information to your place of employment. It has nothing to do with them. It is completely confidential, because patient-client confidentiality is important. So if you call that number and you say, I need to come and talk to someone, they're going to probably do a quick assessment and asking you what is going on, what do you think you need, and then they're going to give you a list of names of people that you can probably contact in your area that will support you. Because of COVID, it is a little bit different. Some people are only doing teletherapy. Some people are choosing to do face-to-face. It's all about your comfort level. So you have to be comfortable with whatever decision you make if you're going to participate in treatment. But any records, any information that you share with that counselor or social worker or psychologist or whatever clinical nurse practitioner, whoever that is through the third party of the EAP, that information never comes back to your employer. And the best part about EAPs is usually you can go back as many times as you need to if it's a different issue. So you may go in for your child doing something, so you go for that and then you're done. And then you may go back again for marital issues. You go back and then you're done. Every EAP is different. Some will offer you 5 visits for free. Some will offer you 10, 15, or 20. It just depends on the level of the EAP and what your services are through them. And like I said, when you make the time to speak with someone through the EAP, it's usually someone that you want to match with that takes your insurance as well. Because unless they're doing short-term therapy very quickly and rapidly with you, you usually need 5 or more sessions to really get to the meat of the matter and to discuss things. So you don't have to worry. And I've said this more than once. I've seen people through EAPs in the past, and their company has nothing to do with diagnosis or anything. All the paperwork that I completed was for the EAP because I needed to get paid for my services. So I have to release information to them about the person who came, but it was nothing where I had to submit it to the employer. They have nothing to do with it. The employer just contracts the organization to render those services for you. So if your company does that, use the EAP because that gives you more free visits. And then if it turns into, which I've had in the past, clients who started an EAP and then I took their insurance and then they stayed with me and we continued our services together without an interruption, and it was never a problem. If you don't have an EAP, on the back of your medical insurance card, there should be an 800 number for inpatient and outpatient. You want outpatient. And that number is the one that you call to let them know that you're looking for a counselor or a clinician or somebody in your area. And then they can either, because we're in the tech savvy world, they can send you to a website and you can go through and read about it. One of the resources I'm going to offer tonight that Mary says she's going to try and post is clinicians and counselors in the Metro Detroit area that are African American, because sometimes we'd rather sit across from someone who looks like us. So there's a lot of different resources and options, but never be concerned. The EAP has nothing to do with your employer knowing about your services or your status of care.
Dr. Copeland is also, because I had to remember that our viewing audience doesn't just live in Detroit or just live in Michigan or Metro Detroit. So she will also give us resources. If you live in any state, you will be able to receive the help that you need after this show. Mm-hmm. So we're going to segue into, thank you for touching on some awesome points in regards to educating us more on what bipolar really is. So we're going to phase into emotional abuse now.
Okay.
So for those of you who are watching and you are really enjoying this conversation, let me just give a little plug. For those of you who are watching and really feel that this is valuable information, I am so serious about this. Start a watch party, call a friend, share this information with them so that we can reach out and help as many people as we can who are suffering from our subject matters of bipolar or emotional or physical abuse, because our whole goal is to reach as many people as we can to get them the help that they need to live a more productive and live a more mental healthy life.
Absolutely.
Mental wellness is the goal. So emotional abuse is defined as an attempt to control in just the same way that a person tries to control you in physical abuse. Is in an attempt to control another person. The only difference is that emotional abuser does not physically hit, kick, pinch, grab, push, or even bite, unfortunately, in some cases, or any other form of harm. Rather, the perpetrator of emotional abuse uses emotion as his or her weapon of choice. Okay. So some of the side effects I have noticed for short term was shame, fear, confusion, hopelessness. Can you talk a little bit about what you know to be true about emotional abuse?
So the thing about emotional abuse is that sometimes people minimize in thinking that it's not that big of a deal or it's not as bad as. Because you've heard someone say, well, at least he's not hitting you. Well, abuse is abuse. When someone is causing harm to you or risking your peace of mind, your mental health well-being, your physical well-being, that is abuse. So when you think about some signs of abuse when it comes to emotional and verbal abuse is, say if you ever dated or was with a person who felt the need to keep track of everything you do. So they keep your phone or they go on your phone and they demand to see like passwords, or they try to respond to texts or emails, or they try to keep you from connecting with other people, whether it's going to school or even with your family. They try to isolate you. That's a sign of abuse. There's also the element of someone being jealous and controlling or angry. So they want to dictate how you spend your money. They want to tell you what you can and cannot do as though you're their child. They really want to make everyday decisions for you that you should be able to make on your own. There's also with emotional abuse or verbal abuse where they're demeaning you. They're making you to feel less than, such as talking about how you look. They talk about your intelligence. They talk about even the activities you participate in. So they're constantly putting you down. They put you down not only privately, but also publicly. They may also destroy property that belongs to you, or they blame other people for their outbursts, or they blame you, saying it's your fault. Like, if you hadn't done that, I never would have did this. So it's an if then behind it. There's also sometimes it can lead to physical abuse. It doesn't always, but there's also the threatening to hurt you or someone you love. And so they use that, it's weaponized to keep you.
And hurt themselves.
Right. They do it to weaponize and hold against you so that you feel fear, so that you feel as though, again, if you tell someone, they're going to say it's not that big of a deal, he's not doing X, Y, and Z, or it's or whatever. There's also an element where even in a dating relationship or a significant partner relationship, they can force you to have sex or to be intimate with them. And that means that if you are not interested and they force themselves upon you, people assume that you can't be taken advantage of or raped in a love relationship, but you can, because that person enforces themselves upon you in such a way that you don't want it. And your no is not honored, it's not acknowledged, it's disregarded. And so they also sometimes can try to say again, I did this because you did that. You're going to learn. So it's a form of mistreatment. And so it's no longer a level of intimacy that you're enjoying with them. So what happens is all these combinations of factors, whether used simultaneously or at different points in time, they eat away at you and they chip away at who you are as a person. You begin to question and doubt yourself. You begin to question if you're not able to make good choices because this person says you're stupid enough. At some point, if you don't have a strong sense of self prior to that relationship and that first moment happens, usually that red flag goes off. That's when you say, oh, wait a minute, I need to get out of here. And sometimes we disregard it or we minimize it and say, no, that didn't really happen. Or they said they were sorry and they didn't mean it. And then they keep doing it. Now you have a choice to make. Am I going to get out of here or am I going to stay? And so sometimes we turn on our own selves because we now start internalizing what these people say about us and we believe it. And we start to literally live a life of isolation where it's just them. And if you think about all the different studies that have been done about love and how you speak to someone and the words that you use to build up the character of someone, especially if it's a child, they're looking for people to acknowledge them. They're in a good way, in a positive way, to tell them in reinforcing ways, you're doing a good job. So if the same magnitude of effort is put into telling you you're doing a terrible job, you're a terrible person, you're a horrible cook, I don't like having sex with you, you need to do it this way, you need to do it that way, dress like this, don't dress like that, this looks good on you, that doesn't, don't ever do it. If you have all these constant negative messages, at some point you're going to start to question, am I really, something wrong with me? And then you're going to take their voice and own it like it's yours, and you're going to believe it. And so emotional abuse can be just as damaging as physical abuse because there are constant scars that no one physically sees. If I gave you a black eye, you at least know I got punched in the eye. But if I am emotionally and verbally abused and told I'm no good and no one's ever going to love me, who's going to see those scars? Who's going to see every cut that they've kind of dug into me, every word that they've said about me? And so we have to extend grace to the person who is in an emotional, verbal, abusive relationship because we just assume, just leave. But for them, because they've been isolated to a point where that person is controlling their money, controlling what they do and don't do, controlling where they go and don't go. They have trackers on them to say, where are you at? And I saw where you went today. And, I'm reading through the cell phone bill of who the people you're calling and whose number is this. That is an element of power and control that person tries to impress upon you. And at some point, you become so weak in character and holding yourself together that you literally allow for them to dictate what you do and don't do.
I have to chime in. I promise, Dr. Copeland. I mean, I'm seeing these like and heart emojis. I feel like doing my own heart and like emojis to what you are saying, because you are speaking to me. Let me tell you, I always tell a story in one of these interviews, and unfortunately, I'm about to tell one. I made sure, because of my upbringing, that I would never, ever be a participant of domestic violence or physical abuse. And we're about to get into that, y'all. And so I haven't, but I wasn't as keen and zeroed in on the emotional abuse. You know what I'm saying? And I recently, realize in my journey of healing, realize that in my last relationship, I was, because emotional abusers, just like a narcissist, they also gaslight you as well. Okay. And so you're thinking, and I'll let Dr. Copeland explain what gaslighting is, but you're thinking, all is well. They love me. They're showering me with this and showering me with that. They're taking me here, taking me there, and eventually it stops. Okay. Because that's not who they really are. Who they really are, who is the next level of your relationship, the next phase. And you surprisingly are like, who are you? Where's the other guy? Where's the other girl? And then, like you said, there are always, y'all, ladies, young people, teenagers, and I'm going to have you drop a couple nuggets to the young people as well. There are always signs. There are always red flags. And a lot of time as girls, our heart leads us before our brain and our head and logic. And we get so caught up in our hearts and our emotions and our fondness and love and likeness for them that we kind of lose ourselves a little bit in a relationship. And a lot of stuff goes by us and we don't even realize that we are actually being controlled and we are in an emotionally abusive relationship. And that is not okay. I was in a relationship where my ex would threaten to, if I didn't do exactly what he wanted, he would threaten to break up. And so he did it twice. The first time caught me off guard because he was my world. I didn't think I could make it without him being in my world. And then I started connecting the dots and I'm like, okay, he is starting to be a little controlling. Like he wants me to wear my hair only like this. And he only wants me to wear the clothes that he buys me. And he only wants me to spend a lot of time with his family and his folks. And you talked about isolation. I would usually, in my mind, will drop a nugget and testify that I would usually spend Sundays with her. And then all of a sudden, I found myself not spending time with her on Sundays. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is at first I was so excited. I'm like, oh, he wants me to be with his family, girls. Oh, he wants me he wants to buy these clothes for me. Oh, he's this, he's that. And all along, ladies, it is a form of control. And when you talked about money, oh my gosh, he said, Mary, we don't even have to use your paycheck or your earnings. Cause he was very comfortable in the finances. We can I'll just bank your check and we'll just live off of my money because, I have enough for both of us. And so at first I'm like, okay, I was like, well, maybe that's not a bad idea. We could save, my whole earnings for the year. That's a nice, a little bit of money. So we could do this with it, that with it. And then I started thinking like, Well, hold on. So that means I'm going to have to come to you every time I need money. I'm going to have to come to you when I need this. And I said, oh no. I'm like, Mary, hello, sound the alarm. You're in trouble. Okay. Get out. Get out. And so by the grace of the good Lord, through signs, wonders, prayer, and my pastor, I was able to come out of that relationship before it took a turn, because then I started noticing his temper, hidden temper. This is one of those where you in a relationship, pay attention. Some of those signs are there for a reason. They're there to protect you. Okay.
The key thing that I think is important to note is I'm a firm believer that every relationship requires compromise, a healthy level of it. You give a little, I give a little. But if I'm over compromising all the time and giving in, and I'm made to feel like I should and I didn't do what you wanted and I feel guilty about it, that's a huge problem. And the funny part is most people think that it only happens to women. There are men who are emotionally abused by their partners. They are disregarded as well. And I think the challenge is that because we live in a patriarchal society, we're so accustomed to women being beat down. But there are moments in time where the roles are reversed, and it's shameful on both ends. It's an embarrassment on both ends. It's a struggle on both ends. And this is where, again, it goes back to, like you said, I was so mindful of, I'm going to avoid these things, that I missed the other stuff that could happen. And so not all emotional verbal abusers turn to physical abuse, but it can head that way. And when it does, there's an apology and I'm sorry. And then you forgive them. And then we have a honeymoon phase. We get back to whatever level of norm. And then there's the trigger. There's the bomb that goes off. That leads to possibly not just emotional, verbal. Now it's another physical hit. And it's, look what you made me do. Then it's, I'm sorry, I never should have did that. And then we repeat the cycle. Now it's just a matter of weeks, or it's a matter of days, or they hit you in a spot where no one could ever see you are bruised. They avoid your face, but other parts of you are bruised and you keep it covered. And so the biggest thing is, in all of these dynamics, is that you're isolated. They keep you from other people. They beat you down to a point, not just emotionally, but now physically, that you're so embarrassed or fearful of what others will think, that, or you believe this is, I deserve this and this is all I get, that you stay. And that can start as young as being in high school to college, on up to adulthood. And this is where you have to always extend to yourself love first. Because if you love yourself first, you have a standard of how people can and cannot treat you.
And a boundary. And that's
absolutely
what helped me is I had to remember who I was, and I had to remember my self-love for myself. And I had to remember, what boundaries do you have set in place? So those of you young girls who don't have boundaries, get some. You'll know what you won't accept, what you will,
what's accepted and what is not. And it's okay to have boundaries. We're told too many times that boundaries are mean and how could you tell me I can't do. No, I'm taking care of me. I'm protecting myself from what's out there. Boundaries keep stuff in, and they also keep you out of things. But the key about a boundary is that if it's healthy, that gate can open and close. If it stays locked completely, then it's like, wait a minute, you done locked yourself in. But if you have a gate that's able to swing back and forth in a healthy manner, then you're okay. And it's okay to say no. We're taught, or we're made to believe, you can't say no. Oh, but you can. And your no needs to be respected. I remember very early on, because I have sons, they were playing with some kids, and it was a bunch of kids, their classmates and other people. And a little girl and boy were playing. And at some point, the little girl said, I'm tired of playing. Stop. I don't want to play. And the little boy kept going. And I said, no, you need to stop and respect her no. And he's like, but she just did this. And I said, what did she just tell you? Respect her no. She said she was done. And then the roles reversed. They were playing again. Everything was good. And then he said, no, I don't want to play anymore. And she went to grabbing him and telling. And I said, hey. He respected your no. You now have to respect his. He told you no. He doesn't want to play anymore. Go find something else to do. Walk away. And that's teaching you at a young age. And they were like 5 and 6 and 7 in that window where I was like, you need to respect the person's no. And if we teach that early on, the older you get, my no don't mean yes and my yes don't mean no. My no means no. Right. And so that becomes part of the challenge when you're navigating emotional, verbal, physical abuse, because now my no's aren't as strong. I say no, but they're not as loud. I say no, but they're not as powerful. I say no, but I don't believe the no that I'm saying to you. I don't trust my no.
Your mate knows that.
They'll know that.
They'll pick up on it. You know,
they know it.
She says no now, but later or tomorrow I'll try the same thing, and she won't say no.
If she'll give in, then it's fine. And then the hard part is, when you made the reference to gaslighting, they'll make you think you crazy. They'll make you think, wait, am I being overly sensitive here?
Yes.
Is it me? Right. And that's gaslighting. You start to question yourself like, well, maybe I am and I should stop. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And the reality is they're taking advantage of a situation and abusing you in a manner where they can regain power and control. They're trying to recalibrate so that they're back in control again. They gave it to you for a little bit. And then they were like, oh, wait a minute. And then they set the record straight. And now you're like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have. You're starting to doubt and question yourself. And so this is why it's so important that when you see the red flags and it's telling you, danger, stop, pause, walk away, you did the right thing, Mary. You realize, like, wait a minute, I can only get money from you. I don't have access to stuff. My name's not on anything. Like, what am I missing? No, this isn't cute. I need to know. I need the info. And so you realize for yourself, instead of thinking, oh, that's so sweet and he wants to take care of me. He wants to take care of you, all right. Take care of you to the point that if something happened to you, they'd be like, Mary, that happened. You know how Mary is.
Right.
And then other people buy into it, and they be like, "Yeah, you're right. Mary do that sometimes. Girl, you do act like I know he right. And now other people are convinced that he's the good guy.
Yes,
and something's wrong with you, and that's where the gaslighting is, because now you're questioning, like, am I overreacting? Did I probably did do that. I am in the wrong. I'm sorry. Now you apologizing for something they did.
But that's why you have to know, ladies and gentlemen, you have to know yourself. Okay, that's what ultimately helped me out of this situation. I had to know my characteristic traits. I had to know what I would do and what I wouldn't do, what I'm capable of, what I'm not capable. And so I had to start connecting dots, and I'm like, hold on, buddy, you got me mixed up. I'm like, I'm sorry if you thought I was this way, but I'm not.
I am not. And so if you now realize either I was a part of something or I am a part of something, and you've been isolated, the first step is to get out. To find support and help, whether it's through a shelter or a women's organization or whatever is out there, you go and get help. You make yourself physically and emotionally well. That's most important. You establish boundaries. Even something as simple as telling them you can't speak to me that way. You don't get to call me names. You set the tone for what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. You stop blaming yourself for what they're doing. You're not that problem. No. And you can't fix a person that's abusive. That's not your job. Your job is to fix yourself. That's right. To fix yourself and to take care of yourself. And if you've been in a position where you've burned some bridges and you've isolated yourself, now it's a matter of Who can I reach out to? If it's going to be a stranger, again, it can be a shelter, it can be an organization. But say for you, Mary, if damage wasn't done enough to certain relationships, you can reach out and say, I need help. I need to get out of here. I trust you enough to help me to pack up and disappear out of this place. And if they come looking for me, you won't let them find me, or you will make sure that they can't get near me, or you will make sure that whatever needs to be in place, you do. And the hard piece is that people can get PPOs, they can do everything under the sun to preserve what they need to do for themselves, but you have to be very diligent and vigilant in your choices and what you do. Have a plan. I mean,
And
whether it's a
tell
plan of
somebody,
tell somebody, tell
do
them.
not feel like you have to figure this thing
You
out by
don't.
yourself.
You
If
don't.
you're afraid to tell, your mom or your sister or whoever, get with a friend, a coworker, somebody at church, or pastor.
Anybody
Tell
that will
somebody.
listen. Anybody that will listen, they will help you. And if you don't formally have that circle, because some people have been so isolated to that point, that you go to a shelter and say, I need help, I need a plan. I'm not leaving yet, but I need to set a plan in motion. Or you go to an organization that says, how can we support you? The biggest thing that I've always told people when I've had situations where partners are trying to get out of relationships is, before you disappear, create a plan. Have some money stashed away, get your stuff, start packing the stuff you need the most, start stashing stuff where you need to hide it. And if you have someone in your circle that you trust enough to say, this is the plan, this is the day, I need you to pick me up, or I'm out of here and I'm out of here, changing numbers, whatever that looks like. And if that person does come across at a point where they cross paths with you or they track you down, you then have every right to call the police and to defend yourself and to make sure that you have a witness present, because you can't afford to be in that situation alone. So if you're going to remove yourself from abusive situations, create a plan. And if you don't know what that plan looks like, you talk to someone who knows how to get you to exit out safely so that you're not hurt and you're not harmed as you're trying to remove yourself. And even if it's nothing that's extreme, if it's any element or form of abuse of those signs that I expressed or stated, again, Mary's going to post the resources of people that you can get in touch with for support, not just locally, but you can click on the county. Like, you may not live here, you may live in Washtenaw County, or you may live in Macomb County, or you may live in I don't know, Genesee County, nowhere near Detroit, but you need resources. You click that county and a bunch of resources will pop up. Not to say every situation is that extreme, but if it's enough where it's taking away from you your personal sense of self and worthiness, that's not a relationship for you. That's not a health. It could be a parent doing this to you. That's not a healthy relationship. And it's okay to set a boundary and say, I can't be over here. Or if I come visit you with you, as soon as something happens that you know is going, all right, I got to go, I love you. Or you plan on meeting people in public places so that it doesn't escalate. So the reality is you have to do an inventory and a self-check of that relationship. And if that relationship has these red flags or these things that you're like, oh my gosh, this happens and this happens. It's not just one or two times and that was just random and it stopped. We both were angry, we both said things, because those things happen. But if it's a constant thing where you used to be this mighty and strong person and now the inside of you is shrinking and you're towering internally and emotionally, you're not in a good relationship. You're not in a healthy relationship. You're not in a relationship that's going to give you more. It's taking from you. And that's where you need to get out. That's where you need to remove yourself.
And if your friends or family members are telling you you're acting different, you're dressing different, you're not your normal self, they're not just telling you that just to hate on you and your relationship, or whatever other thoughts you might think they're doing it for. They're telling you that because they see you changing. Mm-hmm. And take notice of your situation to see if you are actually in emotional abusive relationship, because you might just very well be. So I got two more
Yeah.
things I wanna say about it, and then we'll jump into, because I love talking to Dr. Copeland. Y'all know how I am. I am such a nerd, and I love to talk about mental health and mental wellness. And so we could talk all night, but for the sake of this conversation, you got to get back to her boys, and I got to get back to crunching numbers for this business I got going on, and you guys got to go to bed and get ready for your day tomorrow. So,
Right.
two more things. Do
Okay.
you think that a person is born with, not born? Let me rephrase that. Do you think that's a learned behavior?
Abuse, you mean?
Being an emotional abuser, like
Yes.
where does
Yes.
that come from?
Yes. Yes. I have a background where I look at what's considered to be family systems. I like to look at the bigger picture. I like to see all the pieces of the puzzle. And so, more times than not, we are a product of our environment, so to speak. And so, if you grew up in a family system where, whether learned, taught, or you just witnessed, you saw how to treat or how to be treated in a relationship or a love relationship. And so you begin to practice those things that you've seen. And depending on the type of person you choose to date, sometimes they're a reflection of the person that you saw growing up. They could be a reflection of the parent that you saw treated a certain way, that you say, I'll never date that kind of person. Or, the challenge becomes sometimes we witness things and we go to far extreme of I'll never do that. And then you so far on the other side that it's like you out here and you need somebody to reel you back in. So it's not necessarily something that's intentionally taught, but it is something that children learn. Children practice what they see. They learn better by what's put before them. Sometimes it's by what's actually said to them, and sometimes it's by actually how you're treated. And so it is a behavior that unfortunately you learn because you've seen it. You've witnessed it happening.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a bad person. It's just that they may have been in that type of environment and have learned this behavior.
Mm-hmm. And they were never given the tools or resources to understand that what you saw or what you did was wrong. So you repeat it. So
it's not our jobs, ladies and gentlemen. If that's their problem, that's their problem.
It's not your job to fix them.
It is not our job to fix them. And as ladies, and I'm sure there are men, right. But I can only speak for being
women.
Girl.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are men who because you love them so much, mm-hmm. You try to fix them. You try your best
to love them.
So
you're going to love it all away. My kids, they were really young and they were arguing about something, and the oldest was trying to tell the little one something, and the little one said, worry about yourself. Worry about yourself. And I laughed so hard because I would say to them all the time, worry about yourself right now. Don't get yourself in trouble because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And so the reality is as adults is we need to worry about ourselves. And we are conditioned to take care of everyone as women. We're conditioned, especially in the Black community, to take it, to carry it all, to hold it all and protect everyone. And sometimes that leads to us putting ourselves so far on the back burner that we're neglected and we negate how we feel. And so this is where you end up in relationships that are abusive. You end up in relationships thinking you don't deserve more or you can't have more because you've always been taught or told you don't deserve more.
Or you feel, I want to answer that, or you feel that is the best you can get.
Absolutely.
Like you will never meet another guy like that. And whatever the good stuff is about him, you'll never meet that again. I'm here to tell you, ladies,
you can't.
That is a lie. Okay. Just like you met him or her, you can meet another him or her, a better version.
Absolutely. And sometimes the self-inventory comes with what's inside of me that I'm attracting this type of person to me. You know, birds of a feather flock together. That comes in friendship circles, sister circles, man friends, and especially in dating relationships. What's in me that's attracting you to me? What's drawing you to me? And why am I drawn to you? What's in there? What's broken that I'm coming together with your brokenness, thinking this is all going to work? So this is why I'm a firm believer that counseling doesn't have to be just because there's a problem. Counseling can be just the same way that you take your car to get maintenance and oil checks and checkups, or you go to the doctor once a year for a checkup. Counseling can serve that same purpose, where you do the work, you take care of yourself, you learn who you are. I'm a firm believer. If you can take a job and they put you through all this training and you learn all these things about a job and what's the best fit, and they give you a career assessment and they tell you this your personality, and all of that is being done for a job. How can you not invest that level of time and energy to it yourself, the person you have to be with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
That's so good.
So if you're going to look at going to treatment or counseling because you have a problem, then you have the wrong perspective of it. It's really about you doing a check-in and saying, how can I be better? Not better in the sense that I'm a wonder, but better, how can I be healthier? How can I be my best version, healthy self, whether it's as a person and how I treat myself, how I am as a parent, how I am as a sister or a brother, how I am as a daughter or a son, how I am as a person who wants to just be good in the world. And so you need to know who you are, but you can't do that if you're constantly looking at who you are through the reflection of someone else.
That's right. You got to know who you are.
You have to know yourself first. And so when you decide to make different decisions about taking care of yourself, whether it's your mental health, not just bipolar, it could be Michigan. We live in a climate where people suffer from seasonal affective disorder in the winter. Sad. And they just say, oh, it's just the blues. Well, look at what we live at. But you can get treatment. You can do whatever is needed. You may struggle with anxiety. You may have post-traumatic stress. You may have trauma that you're dealing with from what you've witnessed in your lifetime. Physical trauma, emotional trauma, mental trauma. So how do you debrief? How do you deal with the crises of life and take care of yourself and say, I'm a priority. My mental health is important. And we have to be able to give the positive message of it's okay to talk to somebody, and not just your friend. A trained clinician who can say, hey, I'm not going to co-sign your mess. I'm going to challenge you on some of the things that you're saying, but I'm also going to support you. You're not going to always love your therapist. You never will, because they're going to say things that may cause you to pause or feel like, I don't believe they just said that to me. But the reality is they're sitting in an objective position to help you to become the better version of yourself, to become healthier. And you have to be willing to take that journey to look at that ugly stuff in yourself and say, I want to be better. Not for other people, but for me. I want to be happy. I want to genuinely be happy, and it's not predicated on something or someone else. It's because it's in me to be happy.
So we're going to jump in. Thank you for that. This conversation is. I'm glad it's taped, because I definitely want to come back and look at it for my own self to get some nuggets out of it, because this is so good. So I want to jump into the last few minutes of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
So Psychology Today explains that domestic violence can be physical or psychological, and it can affect anyone of any age, gender, race, or sexual orientation. And while every relationship is different, domestic violence typically involves an unequal power dynamic in which one partner tries to assert control over the other in a variety of ways. And just like we said that, emotional is not any type of physical displays of abuse, but physical and domestic violence is very much so a part of, hitting, kicking, biting, burning, unfortunately. And this is not accidental. This is totally intentional. Okay. So can you speak to domestic violence? And when you do that, talk about, I learned that there is a spike. I think we talked about this early on, that there was a spike during COVID-19 and during the quarantine time. So talk about domestic violence and why we encountered this spike.
So we were in a position where if you were in an abusive relationship, we at times experienced some form of relief when we were able to be apart and to seek refuge in other places. For kids, like again, domestic abuse and violence can hit every aspect of one's life. It can be a child, it can be an adult, it can be an adolescent, it can be people who work in service industries, abusing elders in homes and facilities, whatever that looks like. Anything, which is important to point out, emotional, verbal, physical abuse are all about power and control. At the core of each of them, it's about power and control. And it's one person holding that power and control over someone else. With domestic, it's physically shown. My power and control are shown to you by how I beat you down, push you, shove you, choke you, yank your hair, pull your arm, slap you, whatever that may be, or even something as simple as a parent beating you. And so because of COVID, we were in such a unique situation where most of us had never been with someone for, give or take, let's see, this started in March, and we were literally for about 3 months nonstop sheltering in place. And I said jokingly one time, I don't think any of us have spent this much time with our significant others since we were dating. You know, and you know, when you're in that honeymoon, I love you to death phase, you just can't get enough of each other. You want to be with each other all the time. They can do no wrong. They draws don't stink, all of that. And when you are now married or in a relationship that is harmful to you, you don't get to go to work for 8 hours and have a break. You don't get the opportunity to go to a parent's house and have a moment if they don't know, especially in most domestic violence situations. Other people don't know because you've hid it so well. You've done such a good job of covering up, not just the physical scars, but the emotional scars, the mental scars. You've done such a good job of masking it from everyone that when we sheltered in place and that person is irritable and they're frustrated and they're tired of being in the same space, they can't go anywhere. And I mean, those of us who took it seriously, we didn't go anywhere.
Right.
Like you were in your house, and if you went to the store, that was it, and you came back home. You didn't see your family. You physical. You didn't see, maybe video you had them, but physically you didn't have other people to kind of breathe, so to speak, to exhale. And so when you think about a physical domestic abuse situation already being volatile, and it doesn't matter what it is, it sets a person off because you assume if I just do it just right, they won't hit me today. And you don't know what it is that led them to hit you the last time, and you don't know what's going to lead to them hitting you this time. They have their own triggers, which is why you can't fix them. And you're just one of those triggers that they take their frustrations out on. And when we sheltered in place, there's an increase in abusive situations because where else can you go? Kids can't go to school to get away from an abusive parent. Your job is not an essential job, so you can work from home. So you can't leave. Your partner is not an essential job, so they're at home. And then you're with each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that alone is stressful. Then you combine that with the fact that we have to be safe. We have to make certain choices. We can't see people. We can't go anywhere. We can't go shopping. Like things were shut down. So that level of pressure is building up. It built up. And when it erupts, you are the only thing that's around to hit on and release. So there was this increase in abusive situations because you had kids who were at home who couldn't get away from it, partners at home who couldn't get away from it. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Who are they going to run to? I can't run out the house. I can't run to a neighbor's house because my neighbor not going to let me in because we're sheltering. And I don't know if you got COVID. So I'm avoiding everything and everybody like the plague, literally, but I can't avoid you, the abuser in my home. And so that spike was because of the unknown. A lot in a healthy situation, it was stressful. So imagine an unhealthy relationship that has constant pressure points, always being pushed, constant triggers, always going off. And now I have to be in the house with you for 3.5 months with no level of escape.
And you can experience emotional and physical abuse at the same time.
Yes, yes, because they're talking about you and they're pummeling you. They're telling you, I didn't like this and you're not good enough. And then they physically show you that they're not happy with you. And so where are we going to go? Where are you going to go get help? What most of the mental health physicians' offices are closed. We switched over to virtual platforms. People weren't taking new clients. They were seeing the ones they already had. So the level of mental health wellness or the lack of wellness went up because we were in such unique situations. No one in their lifetime ever thought we would experience a pandemic, ever. Like anyone over 100 can probably say, I lived through the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. But are they all in the right frame of mind to be able to share the story and what they went through? None of us imagined that it would be this level. Ever. Like, who would ever say, yeah, the 2020 is going to bring a pandemic and we're going to be sheltering in place? No one predicted that. So now that we're here, we don't know how to function because we've lived in a constant state of go, 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 go. Distraction.
What do you tell? Because right now we're out of quarantine, so they've already gone through what they went through, and hopefully they don't go through it again if we have to go back into quarantine in the fall. So what do you tell that man or that woman who is in a domestic violence situation?
What I would say is you have to get help. You need to reach out to someone who can offer you the support that you need. If you know, which I've said more than once with clients, if it's not safe for you to leave, let's start making that plan for you to get out. Let's start creating that plan for you to exit. If you have the means or the ability to walk away with just the clothes on your back, go. Start over some other kind of way. Go. Because your life is in harm's way. And if you stay here, you won't have one. So I'd rather you be out here figuring it out if that's your only option than to stay in something that you're going to die. Because unfortunately, domestic violence situations lead to death. And so my plea right now would be is if you or someone you know is in a situation where you need help, then one of the resources is the state of Michigan has a domestic violence website as well as crisis hotlines to talk to someone about what's happening for you. Because we're only in a state where we don't have to shelter, the hope is that as you leave out of your space, you're able to make the necessary calls or go to the necessary places in your area or your community to talk to someone. But if you have family support, which again, unfortunately, in most of these situations, you've been isolated to the point that you don't have anyone else to turn to. If you still have those family or friend connections, go to them. Use them as your resources to get out and to get away and to take care of yourself. And if you know that you're in a situation where your life is at risk and you have children, get up and go. You can't leave them because they'll be taken as far as the abuse or the grunt for you not being there. And if that means that you have to go to a shelter, if that means you have to go to an organization that can give you the referral that you need, if that means that you just run to a family member's house or a friend's house or a neighbor's house just to get out so that you can figure out what your next steps are, do it. Because you aren't guaranteed to be here if you stay in a volatile situation where that person is threatening you, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. They're taking everything from you, and you have to find a way out.
And for those who think that you know, emotional or physical abuse is a sign of love. For those people who think that, you know, they're emotional but they love me. He hits me sometimes, but he loves me. Can you speak to that?
The hard piece is that that individual is making excuses for that person. Because they've done such a good job of masking and covering it up. They've done that for so long that usually the person that's being abused begins to believe that they deserve it. And that's the position that they're going to be in. And if they were to just do better, they would not get hit or they would be fine. And so the challenge becomes, again, I can't reiterate enough, regardless of the situation you're in, whether it's emotional or verbal or actual domestic physical abuse, you have to get out of it. It's not an option not to, because the longer you stay, the more harm is done to you in every way, because you're not the same person as you were when you went in, and you're not going to be the same person when you come out.
Harming somebody is not a show of love.
It is not.
It really is like the opposite.
If someone says that they love you and they hit you at the same time, and then they say, I'm sorry, at what point do you no longer believe that they don't love you and that they're going to hit you? Because love shouldn't hurt like that. It never should. It should never involve someone putting their hands on you and thinking this is an option. If I have to defend myself from you, that's not love. If I have to run and hide, that's not love. If I have to be fearful of when you come home, that's not love. If I pull in my driveway and I sit in my car and I don't want to come in the house, and it's because of these factors, that's not love.
And if you operate in fear all the time,
you're in a heightened state. You're in a constant state of vigilance, and no one can be in a constant of hypervigilance. No one should be in a constant state of hypervigilance in a relationship that's considered a love relationship. And so, whether you're an adolescent or a college age or an adult person who's like, oh, but it's not that bad, don't excuse it. One time is one time too many. If they had the wherewithal to do it once, they will probably do it again. And unless you send a very clear message and boundary that this is not an option, it will continue. Because I have seen relationships where, it got rough between them, but that was the only time it ever happened, because they both were like, this was not good. This is not, we never. So that's something different. But what I'm saying is those relationships where you become someone's emotional, verbal, physical punching bag on a daily or at least a consistent, regular basis, that's not love, and that's not a healthy state to be in. And you need to remove yourself. And you need to have other people help you to remove yourself or to confide in. So you need a support network in place for exiting. I know for you, just based on the story you shared, if you didn't have a support, you probably, or somewhere to go to for support or other people to say, we got you, you probably would be one of those persons who stayed.
And more importantly, my relationship with the Lord. Yeah. That really was my foundation. And loving yourself. I mean, I know I talk about that a lot, but it is so real to have self-respect. Mm-hmm. You have to respect yourself first, so you can recognize who is disrespecting you and put that boundary in place and say, no, I do not allow those things to be said to me, and I do not allow myself to be physically harmed. That is not okay. It's not okay to say those words to me, you know. So you have to love yourself. And for those who don't know the Lord, get to know him. For those who like to have a relationship without him, it is not going to work. I'm here to tell you, I've tried it both ways. Have the Lord in the middle of your relationship. It is so important to get with somebody who is equally yoked.
Yes.
That's a lot of times a Christian woman trying to marry somebody in the world and convert them. Good luck. Okay. Good luck. For real. Don't even go there. For real. Meet somebody on a page that you are on and y'all can build together from there. But if y'all not on the same page mentally, emotionally, your goals aren't in the same alignment, you don't have the same ideas of what a marriage look like. I mean, I could go on and on. How you spend your money, how you save your money, how you want to raise your children, how many children you want to have. I mean, we jump sometimes in relationships so fast without really knowing who we sleeping with.
Right.
Without really knowing who this person really is. And these type of people, they'll mask themselves for a nice little while. That's why courtship is so important to get to know. It's no time limit on courtship. Get to know that person as long as you can. Look at their patterns. You know what I'm saying? Pattern, it's not what they say. Please don't go off that 100%. It's how they behave. It's how they act. That's the real truth. You know what I mean? What the pattern is, what they continue to do. That's who they really are.
They say actions speak much louder than words.
So much louder.
So you have to be able to see that. You have to be able to see that. And everything you said is very, very true. And that's just the reality of whether you're saved or not, you're a Christian or not, you love the Lord or not, you still need to be in something that's compatible, that's a partnership, that's healthy. And, I tell people all the time, hashtag Jesus and the therapist. You can have both. You don't have to choose. Baby. Just because you go to counseling doesn't mean that you don't believe or trust or have faith in God. It just means that he's put people in the earth who are skilled and trained to help you in the earth so that you can deal with earthly issues. Because everything is not so spiritually bound and that earthly good. So it's okay to have both and to accept that you need both because you don't have to choose. And that's the permission we have to give ourselves as people, as Christians, as believers, that it's okay to ask for help for people who are around you or people who are skilled enough to help you. Let them help you.
Now, as usual, we always go over and we have, no matter how much I watch the clock, no matter how much I try to limit my comments and questions, but it is what it is, y'all. Y'all know I love absolutely having Dr. Copeland on the show because this is good real life information. Yeah. And I think this is, I think out of all the shows that I do, this is definitely one of the top 3 or top 5 because we really need to hear this information so we can live our best lives. Truly, these resources, these nuggets, these real life examples and stories and experiences and professional, information that Dr. Copeland gives to us is so valuable and it's priceless. It really is. I mean, what you're getting right now is a gift.
It's free. And it's free.
I mean, you can't get no better than that, y'all, for real. So if anything, take this information seriously, share it with others, share this video with others, share this information with others who you feel are being impacted in some way by bipolar, by emotional or physical abuse, so that they can get some help. Now, we didn't really get into children being abused. So before we go and wrap this up, I want you to talk about, children who are being abused in general and because of, the kids being homeschooled, nowadays.
Yeah, I think some of the telltale signs to look for, especially if you're an adult who's around a child, one is that there's physical bruising, and there's always an excuse or there's a made up story about something happened, or it's always them saying they did something, you should start to question and wonder. If you see that there's a change in their demeanor, like they're just not the same. They were this happy kid and now they're, quiet and they're isolating themselves and they're no longer around peers or even they're acting out. They're the complete opposite. These are signs to look for. And whether you are a parent or a friend of the family or a family member or an educator in the system or even a physician or a mental health professional, there is a duty for you to report. There is a duty for you to at least get something of a case open for someone else to come in and to investigate that situation. Because when it all really comes out, a child can't cover up for so long what's really happening to them. And they, again, if you see that they're bruised or broken or, it's one thing where you have a kid who's just a stunt devil and that's what they do. They always own the man from something. That's something different. But for 3-4 months, they've been only in isolation in the house with you or someone else who's harming them. And you see these very distinct things happening, that they're different. Their demeanor is different, whether it's them acting out or whether it's them kind of completely becoming something different. That's the issue where we become the voices for them. We are their advocates, and it's our job as adults to protect them and to make sure that they're okay. And even if you say that it's a family member that's hurting their kids, you need to intervene. You need to speak up. And you may say, that's not my problem, or that's not my house, or I don't have nothing to do with that. It takes a village to protect children because they can't protect themselves. And so if you see certain things happening or you notice that things are different with the kid, and at some point they eventually open up and tell you, you have a responsibility to act in their best interest and to protect them and to take care of them and to make sure they're safe. Who cares if it's your sibling? Who cares if it's a cousin? You don't have the right to harm a child. It's not your right. It's not your place to hurt them. And so if you witness or you are aware of these things happening, you need to speak up and you need to report. Because the only way to stop it is to actually stop the cycle of abuse. You can't stop it if you let it keep going. You can't stop it if you turn a blind eye. You can't stop it if you minimize the reality of that is not discipline, that is abuse. There's a difference. And so you have to be able to be that voice for that kid. And if they come to you telling you what's happening, you still need to say something. Don't blow off a child. Even if that child makes the whole thing up, you still have to take it serious and think that something is truly happening. And because we're in a situation where we're just not accustomed to the level of what's happening around us, and who knows, we'll probably end up sheltering again because of all that's happening around us and people not following guidelines, we have to be very conscious and very proactive with making sure the smallest voices are still heard and they're taken care of. So you have a responsibility as an adult to protect kids.
Thank you so much, Dr. Copeland. I love y'all. We could have her on the show every week if I had it my way. Okay. So I will take this time that we have with her, and she did commit to come in and joining us for one more again. So she will be back next Tuesday. Okay. Put that on your calendar. Awesome.
Well, that concludes the Becoming the Best Version of You with Gigi show. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us, y'all. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and check out our other inspiring videos. Until next time, toodles.